I saw an interview with Antonio Tarver where he was basically taking shots at Derrick James, saying that he hasn't taught Errol Spence defense and that he shouldn't have got trainer of the year, basically. He was insinuating that. I'm not sure if Derrick James and Tarver have got some type of issue with each other. I don't know if there's history there. But all I can tell you is there are lots of fans saying the same thing now, that, oh my gosh, Derrick James is no good and AJ's in trouble now. This is reactionary nonsense. Manny Stewart is arguably the greatest boxing trainer of all time. He took Tommy Hearns and several other fighters from the amateurs all the way through to being professional world champions. He was in Tommy Hearns' corner when Hearns got beaten by Sugar Ray Leonard. He was in Tommy Hearns' corner when he got knocked out by Marvin Hagler. He was in Tommy Hearns' corner when he got knocked out by Iran Barkley. And that's arguably the greatest trainer of all time. It doesn't matter how good a trainer is. Most of your fighters are going to lose. And in some cases, like with Hearns, in top fights, super fights. Eddie Futch is another trainer who some people say is the greatest of all time, or one of the candidates for greatest boxing trainer of all time. Well, he trained Joe Frazier. What happened when Joe Frazier fought George Foreman? And on the flip side of that, Bomac, the guy who trains Terence Crawford. You think Bomac's fighters have never lost? I could talk about when Bomac trained Amir Khan for the Kell Brook fight, but it was only one fight, right? But Bomac has trained plenty of other people who've lost. And you don't discount all of the work that Errol Spence and Derrick James have done, all of the things they've achieved, just because they lost to Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford's just that good. In my opinion, you could have had any trainer in the history of boxing train Errol Spence for a couple years in the run-up to that Terence Crawford fight, and the result would have been the same. Spence's ceiling is just not as high as Crawford's ceiling. Doesn't matter who trains him. In fact, I doubt any other trainer could have got any more out of Errol Spence, to be honest with you, because he's not some type of super athlete who has a load more untapped potential. Spence is kind of mechanical. He's not a naturally fluid athlete like Terence Crawford is. So that's going to limit what you can do with him if you're training him. I mean, I'll give you another example. Look at the Mayweathers. Roger Mayweather, Jeff Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather Sr. How many other Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s have they produced? Think about all the fighters they've trained that have lost fights. Remember when Floyd Mayweather Sr. trained Ricky Hatton for the Pacquiao fight? How did that turn out? But yet they produced Floyd Mayweather because Floyd Mayweather was just that talented. It's not all just down to the trainer. It's a marriage of the natural ability of the fighter and the know-how and the knowledge of the trainer. With certain fighters, you see untapped potential in them. And when that potential isn't being realized, that's when you say, okay, he needs to leave that trainer and get someone who can unlock that extra potential he's got. But I've never seen that in Errol Spence. I think he's gone as far as his talent could ever take him with any trainer. Spence can do a bit of everything. Box on the outside, box on the inside, long range, short range, mid range, body punching, head punching, straight shots, bent arm shots. He can get into a jabbing contest. He's very well-rounded, Errol Spence. You talk about his defense, again, going back to the Mayweathers. Have they been able to successfully turn everyone they've trained into a defensive wizard like Floyd Mayweather Jr.? No, they haven't. Because it's more than just technique. There has to be sufficient talent there to be able to make the most of the technique. When Spence fought Ugas, he wasn't getting hit that much. And Ugas is a good counterpuncher. Spence was right in front of him working away. He got caught with the odd counter here and there, but for the most part, no. It was one-way traffic. It's just that against Terence Crawford, he came up against elite defense and elite offense combined. Very few fighters have got that combination of elite offense and elite defense and an elite mentality as well as really good punching power. Now, one thing that some people are talking about is when your camp, when your team takes a loss, it can have a knock-on effect. It can affect the confidence of the other fighters within the camp. And so some people are wondering whether that has already happened, whether the arrival of Anthony Joshua in that Derrick James camp and Ryan Garcia negatively affected Errol Spence. Personally, I don't really think it did, because look at Amir Khan when he was in the Terence Crawford camp, when Khan was getting ready for the Kell Brook fight. Khan got the brakes beat off him in the Brook fight. Did that affect Terence Crawford in his next fight? No, it didn't. Obviously, some fighters are more sensitive to these types of things than others. And I think it'll affect a fighter more if they're close with their training buddies. But Anthony Joshua says that he hardly interacts with the other guys. He might watch them spar here and there, but because they've got different training times most of the time. They don't really interact that much. Just say hello and have a few words in passing. They're not really tight or anything like that. So I don't think that would have affected Errol Spence going into the fight personally. Will it affect Derrick James now that Terence Crawford has destroyed Errol Spence in that way? Will he be less confident with Joshua going into the Dillian Whyte fight? I don't think so. In fact, this might sound weird, but I reckon this might actually make AJ feel even better about being in that camp. And the reason I say that is because Errol Spence has been very critical of Anthony Joshua in the past. He accused Joshua of quitting against Andy Ruiz. He accused AJ of having a glass jaw. These are all statements he's made publicly. AJ knows he's made those statements. And AJ's just seen that happen to Errol Spence. I suspect, I don't know, that AJ might be thinking, I'm going to be the guy to bring this camp back up. There's nobody in this camp that makes me feel inferior as a fighter. Most of these guys are taking L's now. I'm going to show these guys around me how you come back. That's what I suspect he'll be thinking. Maybe I'm wrong. And of course, Derrick James is a very experienced trainer, and he was a professional fighter himself. He's been through lots of ups and downs. And whenever you hear Derrick James talk, he never likes to get carried away with anything, good or bad. So for example, he was interviewed by DAZN, Akam Barak, prior to the Terence Crawford fight. And he was talking about how he never sees it as a competition between himself and the trainer in the other corner. He just concentrates on what he's doing and what he needs to teach his fighter and tell his fighter. He just focuses on what his job is and doing his job as well as he possibly can. He doesn't get into all the accolades and this, that, and the other. Obviously, he went and accepted his award for Trainer of the Year, whatever, but he doesn't overthink these things. This is what he says in interviews. I'm sure it will hurt Errol Spence losing in that fashion because Errol Spence was his finest work, but it's not Derrick James's first rodeo, so I'm sure he'll get over it. Perhaps it will make him even more determined. And as for Derrick James's corner work for the Spence fight, I'm hearing a lot of people criticize it. Oh, he didn't know what he was doing in the corner. Like I said earlier on, I don't care what trainer you put from history in the corner of Errol Spence in that fight against Crawford. In my opinion, it wouldn't have made any difference. The talent and ability gap was too wide between them for any different type of technique to be able to have bridged it. I spoke in the post-fight video for Inoue Fulton about how Inoue's mind, the clock speed of his brain, was just faster than Fulton's. Similar situation with Terence Crawford against Errol Spence. Crawford's brain was just working faster, figuring things out quicker, seeing things and being able to react to things more quickly. That's why, as Errol Spence said, Crawford was able to punch in between his shots. That's not just a hand speed thing, that's a timing thing. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.